It's Sunday night. Your favorite NFL team already played. The game currently on television means absolutely nothing to you. You don't care who wins. You don't care who loses. You might not even like either team. And yet you're standing 3 feet away from your television screaming at an NFL quarterback because he refuses to throw the ball to a 27-year-old tight end you had never heard of 6 months ago. You don't know this man. You've never been to his city. You probably couldn't pick his offensive coordinator out of a lineup. But tonight, you need him to catch 4 more passes because you're down 6.7 points to your friend Kevin. And Kevin has been talking trash in the group chat since Thursday. Suddenly, this completely meaningless football game has become the most important sporting event of your weekend. That's the magic of fantasy football. It can make you care about everything. A random Jaguars-Titans game? Important. The backup running back for the Panthers? Very important. Whether some wide receiver gets tackled at the 1-yard line instead of falling forward another 3 feet? Potentially devastating. Fantasy football takes a sport that was already incredibly entertaining and basically adds another game on top of it. And once you've experienced an NFL season this way, watching football without it starts to feel strangely empty. Because you're no longer just watching your team, you're watching the entire league. Millions of completely normal adults have agreed that spending 4 months obsessing over the statistical performance of athletes they've never met is one of the best things you can possibly do with your friends. The weird part, they might actually be right. It all starts with one night, the draft, and there's almost nothing else like it. 10 or 12 people get together and, for a few hours, become completely convinced that they're NFL general managers. Everyone has a strategy. At least they think they do. One guy has spent 3 weeks researching. He has spreadsheets, rankings, sleepers, strength of schedule, target shares, offensive line grades. He has listened to 17 podcasts and somehow knows which running back has been getting first-team reps at training camp. Then there's another guy who forgot the draft was happening until 8 minutes before it started. He picks 3 quarterbacks, and somehow that guy wins the league. Every year, the same thing happens. The draft begins calmly. The obvious players disappear first. Everyone likes their team. Everyone thinks they're drafting well. And then somebody makes one weird pick. What? You took him? In the 3rd round? And suddenly, it's chaos. Players start disappearing 2 picks before you wanted them. The guy you're targeting gets taken. You panic. The timer is counting down. 10 seconds. 9. 8. You click on somebody you barely researched and immediately convince yourself it was secretly the best pick of the draft. Nobody knows anything yet. Every team is undefeated. Every sleeper is about to break out. Every rookie is going to be incredible. Nobody is injured. And somehow all 12 people leave the draft thinking they have the best roster, which is mathematically impossible. But give it about 3 days, because then the NFL season starts, and everything falls apart. Your first-round pick gets 8 carries. Your starting quarterback throws 2 interceptions. The receiver you almost drafted scores 3 touchdowns. And the random guy sitting on your bench? 28 points. This is the first rule of fantasy football. Your bench players are significantly better at football when they're on your bench. Put them in your starting lineup next week? 4 points. Put them back on the bench? 23. There is no scientific explanation for this. It simply happens. And slowly, something else starts happening too. You begin learning an absolutely unreasonable amount about the NFL. Before fantasy, you probably knew the stars. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Jefferson, the players everybody knows. Then fantasy football gets involved. Suddenly you're reading injury reports for the 2nd-string running back in Indianapolis. You know who gets red zone targets in Tampa Bay. You know which team allows the most fantasy points to tight ends. You know that some receiver you've never watched before has averaged 8.3 targets over his last 4 games. And then someone walks into the room and asks you a perfectly reasonable question. Why do you know that? You don't really have an answer. Fantasy football turns NFL knowledge into a survival skill. Your running back gets injured? You need his backup immediately. You see the injury happen on television, and before the replay even starts, half your league is already opening the waiver wire. But the biggest thing fantasy changes isn't what you know. It's what you care about. Normally, being an NFL fan is pretty straightforward. You have a team. Let's say you're a Cowboys fan. The Cowboys play at 3:25. That's your game. Obviously, you'll watch some other football. Maybe Sunday Night Football. Maybe a good early matchup, but you're emotionally invested in Dallas. Fantasy completely destroys that system. Now you have employees everywhere. A quarterback in Buffalo. A running back in Atlanta. 2 receivers in Cincinnati and Seattle. A tight end in Baltimore. A kicker you don't even remember drafting. and a defense you picked up Thursday because some guy on the internet told you their matchup looked good. Every NFL game suddenly contains something you need, and this creates situations that would make absolutely no sense to a normal person. Your favorite team is winning. Great, but they're winning 24-10, and the opposing quarterback has the ball with 45 seconds left. A normal fan wants the game to end. You need that quarterback to throw one completely meaningless touchdown. So now you're cheering against your own team's defense. Just let them score. Your friend looks at you. What are you talking about? Trust me, your actual football loyalties start fighting with your fake football loyalties. And sometimes the fake ones win. There is no more confusing feeling than watching your favorite team's running back break through the defensive line and thinking, yes! Then remembering your fantasy opponent started him. No! Then remembering you're a fan of the team. Wait, yes! It's completely irrational, and that's what makes it fun. Because the NFL suddenly isn't a collection of 32 teams anymore. It's one enormous interconnected game. A touchdown in Cleveland can change your matchup in Dallas. An injury in Miami can send everyone in your league racing toward the same waiver wire player. A garbage time reception in a game that's already over can decide who has bragging rights for the next 7 days. There is perhaps no phrase in fantasy football more terrifying than garbage time, because fantasy does not care whether a play matters in real football. Your opponent's receiver has 3 catches for 27 yards. His team is losing by 24. There are 2 minutes left. You've won. It's over. You relax. Then the defense starts playing soft coverage. 10-yard completion, 8-yard completion, 12-yard completion. Suddenly you're sitting forward. Why are they letting him catch everything? Another reception. Then they reach the red zone. No. Touchdown. You lose by 0.8. The touchdown changed absolutely nothing about the actual NFL game. The stadium is half empty. The winning team barely celebrates. But somewhere in America, a grown man has just had his entire week ruined. And tomorrow morning, his friends are going to make sure he knows about it. Which brings us to the part of fantasy football that might actually matter most. The group chat. You could make fantasy football completely free. Remove the prize money. Remove the trophy. And millions of people would probably still play, because the real prize isn't necessarily winning money. It's getting to tell your friends they're idiots. Fantasy football gives adults something increasingly rare, a reason to consistently talk to the same group of friends every single week. Think about it. People move, they get married, they have kids, they change jobs. Friends who used to see each other constantly suddenly live 3 states apart. And then every August, someone sends the message, "Are we doing the league again?" And everybody comes back. The same people, the same jokes, the same rivalries. The same guy complaining that the scoring settings are unfair even though nobody has changed them in 6 years. The draft might be the only night all year everyone gets together. And then for the next 4 months, there's always something to talk about. Trades, injuries, waivers, bad beats, terrible lineup decisions, and, most importantly, public humiliation. Because when somebody makes a terrible trade, it doesn't disappear. Screenshots are taken. Evidence is preserved. Years later, someone can still say, "Remember when you traded that guy after week 2?" And everyone knows exactly what they're talking about. Every league develops its own mythology. The guy who went undefeated and lost in the first playoff round. The championship decided by a kicker. The manager who drafted terribly and somehow won everything. The trade that everyone laughed at until it completely changed the season. And then there's the worst place any fantasy manager can possibly be. Last. Good leagues understand something very important. Winning should be rewarded, but losing should have consequences. Maybe last place has to wear something embarrassing. Maybe they have to do a ridiculous challenge. Whatever it is, suddenly the consolation bracket becomes as intense as the championship. 2 teams with 3 wins are playing each other in week 15 like it's the Super Bowl, not because they're trying to win anything, but because they're trying to avoid something. 2 adults intensely watching the Raiders play the Browns because one of them desperately needs 9 points from a tight end to avoid spending next year's draft dressed like a clown. Try getting that experience from normal football. Fantasy also gives you something else, the feeling that you know what you're doing, even when you absolutely do not. You win 3 weeks in a row. Suddenly you're a genius. You knew that rookie would break out. You saw something everyone else missed. You're 6-2. You start thinking, maybe I'm actually really good at this. Then you lose 4 straight games because your players randomly stop scoring touchdowns. And fantasy football reminds you of the truth. You control almost nothing. That's exactly why it's so addictive. It's just enough skill to make you believe you're in control, and just enough chaos to prove you're not. Every week gives you another chance. Monday morning, you're furious. You swear you're done. This is stupid. I'm not doing this next year. Then Tuesday arrives. Waivers. You start looking at available players. Wednesday, you're considering a trade. Thursday, your lineup is set. And by Sunday morning, you're completely back in. That's why fantasy football might be one of the smartest things that ever happened to the NFL. It transformed the way people consume the sport. Your interest doesn't end when your favorite team's game ends. There's always another player, another matchup, another reason to watch. Thursday night football matters. The early Sunday games matter. The afternoon games matter. Sunday night matters. And then Monday night arrives, where fantasy becomes psychological warfare. Because by then, most of the week is finished. You know exactly what you need. You're down 17 points. You have one player left. Your opponent has nobody. And suddenly an entire NFL game has been reduced to one question. Can this man score 18 fantasy points? Every catch becomes mathematics. 5-yard reception. That's 1.5. 20-yard catch. Okay, we're alive. Touchdown. Now you're pacing around the room. The broadcast doesn't know your fantasy matchup exists. The players don't know. The coaches don't know. Nobody in the stadium knows. But to you, there's an entire second scoreboard floating above the real one. Maybe your player catches one last pass. You win by 0.2. You celebrate. You send a screenshot to the group chat. Your opponent is furious. You go to sleep victorious. Then Tuesday morning, a stat correction comes through. You lost. There are few experiences in sports more humbling. And yet next August, you'll be right back at the draft. I think almost every football fan should try fantasy at least once. Not because you're going to become some football genius, and not because anybody needs an additional reason to be angry on Sunday. You should play because it changes what watching football feels like. You stop seeing games as isolated events. You start noticing players you'd otherwise ignore. You learn how offenses actually work, why targets matter, why injuries to one player can completely change the value of another. You start caring about teams you would normally never watch. And most importantly, you get a 4-month competition with your friends that resets every single year. The NFL gives you a favorite team. Fantasy football gives you a reason to care about the other 31. And yes, it will annoy you. You'll draft someone who gets injured. You'll bench someone right before the best game of his career. You'll propose a completely reasonable trade and get countered with the most insulting offer you've ever seen. You'll stare at 2 players for 20 minutes trying to decide which one to start, choose the wrong one, and spend the rest of Sunday thinking about how you knew you should have picked the other guy. You'll tell everyone fantasy is mostly luck when you're losing. And when you're winning, pure skill. But then one Sunday, something will happen. Your actual team will have already played. You'll turn on some random game you normally wouldn't care about. And you'll realize you desperately need one player to score. Your friend needs him not to. You'll both be watching. You'll both be texting. The player catches a pass, breaks one tackle, gets into the open field, and suddenly you're screaming at the television like it's the Super Bowl. Fantasy football doesn't replace being an NFL fan. It gives you more reasons to be one. It turns random games into important games, random players into your favorite players, normal Sundays into competitions, and a group of friends into rival general managers who will spend 4 months trying to prove they're smarter than each other, only for the guy who auto-drafted his team to somehow win the championship. It makes absolutely no sense. It's incredibly frustrating. You have way less control than you think, and sometime around week 8, you will almost certainly wonder why you agreed to do this. But when next August rolls around and somebody sends that message, "Are we doing the league again?" you already know the answer. Of course you are.